The Panthers 2020 draft is finally over. I watched every single second of it. I saw every single pick. I heard all the commentary. Give you a little breakdown myself. You know how I do it, folks. You never see me do a sports video, but it's all data all the time. Now, before we go too much farther, if you'd be so kind as to give me a like on the video, give me a follow along if you're on X or Rumble, and give me a like and a good old subscription if you're watching on YouTube. Why not, man? It's free. Won't cost you a dime. Tet McMillan, Nick Scorton, Princely. I don't know how to say your last name properly, so I'm not going to ruin it. I'll just go with Princely P. Princely U. You get it. Princely U. P-U. I don't know if I want to say that. How about just Princely U? I think the best thing to do is kind of break this down pick by pick, go through what I thought would happen, what actually happened, and what Dan Morgan managed to pull off. Man, an absolute masterclass in drafting. Now, as I give you a data-driven approach here, I want you to note that I'm going to reference several accounts, reference several things, and I'm going to name drop all those guys because I want them to get the credit that they're due. They did the same data homework that I did. They made it look way better, which is why I'm going to reference their stuff. All my crap was jotted down on pen and paper real sloppily. Then I've developed an algorithm, which I'll talk about later, to kind of look through the stuff. But that's nothing to do with data. That's kind of the back end of what I did. What I want you to see first is the data that a lot of other people came up with, and it was sort of a consensus across the board. All right, here I've got a table of all the available receivers that were open in the 2025 draft, listed out here. This is career contested targets and catch rates. As you see, the number one player on the board here, Tet McMillan, 341 targets, average depth of target 14 yards. These were not short passes. Yards after catch 5, as you see, fairly good across the board. Completed catch to throw 24% of the time. Very nice. These are stats that you wouldn't expect to see a lot of times from most guys, but because he's so big and strong and lean, he tends to make those contested catches. As you see, can't really fuss. Gotta give it up where he makes his best money, which is catching the ball in traffic. Now, the side piece to that, the reason he catches the ball in traffic so much, he's not the perfect route runner. He's kind of big and tall, and because he's so big and tall, it's kind of hard to zig and zag like those smaller, shorter receivers who typically play in the slot do. So sometimes you'll see him kind of round off his routes. Sometimes he kind of keys off to the defensive back what he's going to do because of that, which causes him to have those contested catches. Now, that's nothing that he can't fix. You can teach route running. What you can't teach is size, skill, and speed, and he has all three of those. All right, cool. So he caught the ball in college a lot. Well, how did that compare to all the other players who caught the ball in college over the last several years? Let's have a look. Since 2019, Tet McMillan has had more yards than all of these other guys. Marquise Brown, C.D. Lamb, Jamar Chase, Jordan Addison, and Malik Neighbors. All first-round picks, all productive receivers in the NFL. How about versus the receivers that we already had on the roster? You guys remember Jonathan Mingo? I remember. Yeah, let's try to forget that one. But how about XL, Xavier Legette, jersey hanging up right there behind me. Look at the stats, man. Yards per game, yards per pass attempt. Look at all these red highlighted numbers that you see from Xavier Legette. And look at all the green highlighters you see from Tet McMillan. A lot of wide, not very much slot. Look at the yards per catch. Right on par or better than you want to see from the guys we already had on the roster. Now, as you see, these aren't short passes either. Average yards per pass attempt. Look at this. He leads all of the available receivers in this draft. Emeka Egukpa, Luther Burden III, Matthew Golden, and Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, in passes per attempt. These are long passes typically, not big on screen passes and little slot scoots and stuff like that. He's not running those very many drag routes. It's a lot of deeper, intermediate, and out routes. Now, how about production and athleticism? That's a big talked about thing across the board. What you see in front of me is from @Gridiron Grading over on X. Very cool guy. Has already sorted this stuff out using data that he got from Pro Football Focus, Mock Draftable, etc. This went through combine measurements, pro day measurements, which went on their 40 speed, their broad jump, measurables on bench press, everything. The higher up you get on this scale, the more athleticism you have. The farther to the right you get on the scale, the more production you have. Obviously, you want everybody you pick to be in this quadrant. Tet McMillan falls exactly in that quadrant. As a matter of fact, only receivers with more production than him, Trey Harris, who was also high on, and Travis Hunter. Speaking of that athleticism I talked about a moment ago, you're going to ask, where does that come from? Well, there's a few different ways to go about this. What I really like is someone who's already done the work for us. Kenley Platt over on X is called @MathBomb. He groups this into a relative athletic score. All right, he uses all the measurables you can think of, and I'll get to those more in a second of why they're important. But you can see that comp size, height, weight, he was elite. 6'4" and some change, 219, depending on who you go through, 212, 213. He's a little heavier now as he got older. I like that. By the way, I'm going to go with this official one right here and say 218, 219. That's perfect. 225, 6'4", 6'5", 225 is like the perfect size. Nonetheless, good 40 at 4.5, good 20 at 2.6, good 10 at 1.5. Now, the kicker here is none of these are highlighted in green. Why? Well, he's a big, strong guy. He's not going to be the quick jitterbug that you think he might be in the slot. Someone like Ladd McConkey, who was very, very shifty, or Hunter Renfrow, who played the slot that we recently just picked up, who's very bouncy back and forth, is going to beat you with agility and not beat you with over-the-top speed. The fact that his 20-yard split was 2.6, that tells me he's more of a strider and not a sprinter. So it's going to beat you on the deeper and intermediate stuff and not so much in the short and in and outs like, let's say like a 5-yard dig. It's going to have a harder time with that than he would an 8-yard dig or a 10-yard dig or perhaps going over the top. And I'll show you more about that in a moment, but I wanted you to get where the stats from the athletics come from first. All right, now here's a really, really cool table that gives you an understanding of what's important for each position. All right, I'm going to highlight this wide receiver category right here where you see my cursor going up and down. This is very important. What you're going to notice is the more important measurables for the more certain positions are in dark blue. If it's not as important, it's not dark. It's either a lighter color or just whited out, right? So if you look at wide receiver and you see this column, everything is light blue, which tells us that you want an all-around, well-rounded athlete. Doesn't matter if he's good at necessarily one thing. You want him to hit every category. Whereas if you're an interior offensive lineman, which is this middle category right here that I'm scrolling up and down now, you can see here 3-cone and shuttle are very important. Broad jump is very important. Bench press is very important. 40 is more important. But what's not so important is how tall you are, how much you weigh, or how long your arms are. However, you see, the only things that don't seem to correlate too much for wide receivers are height. You can be short or tall, and hand size. That seems like a tricky one because you say, oh gosh, he's got big hands, he can catch. Well, sometimes the small guys have smaller hands and they still have a really, really good catch score as well. So as you see, we want a well-rounded athlete, which Tet McMillan happens to be, very well-rounded. This one also from Gridiron Grading. This is career production profiles. All time, the entire time you were in college. Now, it's going to be different for some guys who were seniors and different for some guys who are just now getting into the draft. Right, you gotta weigh that a little bit differently. Also, there are also tight ends on this list. Let's just look at the wide receivers. Travis Hunter, Trey Harris, Tet McMillan, the top three. Travis Hunter obviously got the best score, but Tet McMillan, look, 1.49 EPA per play. Rarely in the slot, mostly wide, 92 yards per game, 2.3 receptions per yards per reception, 109 quarterback targets, well over 100 like you want to see. Really good stats. Again, just as good as stats as, not quite just as good, but right up there with Travis Hunter. Honestly, I think after Travis Hunter, it was hard to really go against anybody else and say that they're bad. He was just a step above everyone else. So it seems as though we got the second best receiver in the class, which is actually the best pure receiver in the class. You guys know Travis Hunter plays corner also. All right, shout out to Reception Perception at Reception Perception over on X. Cool data from him there. Tells you the route tree that Tet McMillan runs most of the time. As you see, he's heavy on the upper intermediate routes, corners, outs, and comebacks, post, dig, curl. Heavy on those flat routes where he's running a 5-yard out to the sideline. You see he has that a lot. Screens, 100% success rate on screens. Very nice. But you see other stuff like these out curls, has a little bit of a hard time with. Sometimes these intermediate slant routes give him a hard time. And the one that's really wildest is these 9 routes, over the top deep balls. He only has a 50% win rate on that. And I think that's because he struggles with separation. Now, his contested catch rate is really high, like I said, right? He's got a lot of contested catches and he wins a lot of them. The problem is he sometimes struggles with that separation off the line, which when he gets to that top end speed, he has a hard time getting loose of those guys because he's a strider. He has a hard time getting loose of those guys. They tend to be close to him. And because of that, some of those deep ball 9 routes don't always become complete. All right, cool. How about some film? Some of my favorite stuff to do is break down film. I found this film on YouTube on many, many different pages. I'm not sure which one I'm looking at the moment, but they all kind of show the same thing, show some of his wins. I want you to see some of the problems with some of these wins as well. So I'll play this through and I'm going to kind of stop it and start it. In this particular set, you see that this looks like they've got 3 wide outs, 1 tight end, 1 running back. The tight end is on the near side to Tet McMillan, who's in the square here. Watch this route, watch the play by the defensive back, and see what happens here as this plays out. See the snap goes loose. Not a very sharp hook on that turn. He kind of rounded the route off. And while he did that, look at that defensive back kind of sit on him there and wait for him. Sitting and waiting, sitting and waiting. He's reading the quarterback. He's reading the receiver. He sees McMillan start to break. As McMillan starts to break, he pivots his hips. Problem is he's a little bit late because he waited a little bit too long. McMillan immediately turns his head. Quarterback's already ready to throw the ball as soon as he did, so it was not an anticipation route. Ball comes out. When it comes out, he floats it right over the first corner's head. McMillan is big enough with long enough arms to reach and snatch this ball out of the air, get his feet down, and get the catch. Very cool. Next set, similar play here. Let's watch this one through. Again, near side. This time, he's on the weak side. Tight end is on the top. He's on the bottom with another receiver flankered out behind him. So in this particular set, he's the X, not the Y or the Z. They actually have the Z behind him, and they have a Y up here. So it's a 4 receiver, 1 tight end set. Arizona did this a lot. Let's watch this one play out. Similar story. You can already see the DBs communicating back here. Safety's pointing and saying, hey, man, I got him deep. Corner saying, hey, man, I'm covering the other guy shallow. Watch what happens, right? Let the play run. You're going to see after this, McMillan's already going to run this out route. DBs are trying to figure out what to do. He jumps on the flanker. DB sticks with McMillan instead of switching, right? Very good play by the defenders, actually, to communicate that one out. Problem is, McMillan's good enough to run the exact same out route. This time, the defender was actually a little farther outside, if you saw that. Let me back it up a little bit. Not enough. There we go. Watch how the defender kind of stays a little bit more inside here. Sees a little bit more closer to the sideline. Doesn't give it away so much. McMillan's going to run this out route. He's in a better spot here, so he should be able to make a play. Ball comes out right here. Receiver's watching. Quarterback does not throw an anticipation route. Again, he waits for the receiver to do his move before he throws it. Finally, he lets it loose. This is a very tight coverage here. Interesting to play. Jumps up, makes another contested catch. DB had no chance, even though he was still there. Very interesting. This is something we didn't see a lot from Panthers receivers last year. All right, cool. Similar stories before. Tet McMillan up top by himself. They've got a flanker going to come in behind him. It's almost the exact same set we saw a moment ago. This time they have an extra running back in the game instead of a wide receiver, and the tight end is lined up on the right side. So right side, strong side here. He's X by himself, and they have a flanker coming over in the back to try to confuse the defense a little bit. They're already kind of tipping their hand to the defense that this ball's going to go to Tet. Why do I say that? Because they did this the entire year in Arizona. You'd have to go back and watch all the film, but this is versus Travis Hunter. So what's interesting about this play here is I'm going to let this play out a little bit. Remember I said earlier he kind of struggles on those slant routes, and that's exactly what this is. This requires him to get some separation and use his strength to kind of push through, because he's a big, strong guy, like I said, kind of push through the defense and give this quarterback a security blanket. You're also going to see a blitz come, and this quarterback's got to get rid of the ball fast. Where does he go? He goes to his A-plus receiver, Tet McMillan here. Watch this play out, right? Again, Travis Hunter's one of the best corners that maybe have ever came out of the draft. Heisman Trophy winner, two-way player. Travis Hunter immediately gets a jam on him and doesn't let him go. McMillan has to go through two defenders here to try to get through this. This guy showed blitz and then backed off, trying to play a little bit of quarterback spy. McMillan runs right by him. Hunter is all over him here. Quarterback's already about to let the ball go. Look, he's got pressure in his face. He lets it go, takes a smash of a hit. McMillan is right there. The other thing I haven't talked about is his ability to reach his hands up and pluck the ball out of the air. Rarely ever did Tet McMillan, his entire career in college, have body catches. They were almost all exclusively hand catches. You can't teach that. Well, you can teach it, but a lot of people struggle with it. He's a natural hand catcher. I absolutely love that from any receiver I want to see. He makes this catch on Travis Hunter with Travis Hunter draped all over him. You see that? He's all over him and still makes the catch. Bam. With his hands, not his body. Drags Hunter for a second before Hunter takes him down. This was an excellent play. Again, showing blitz. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys coming. 5 guys showing. They've got another linebacker back here showing he wants to blitz, and he does. And instead of taking that defensive end from the top or the edge from the top, they drop him in spy. They send this outside linebacker up. He actually is a safety. He's playing the joker role. They run a 3-3-5 there. So he's coming off this edge, running straight up the gap. Unblocked. Look at that. Unblocked rusher. McMillan gets behind that spy at just the right time, turns his head, shows the quarterback he's ready. Quarterback's loaded right there. His head just turned. Quarterback sees him. He sees the quarterback. Perfect play. You really can't ask for much more from a receiver. Remember I said Travis Hunter was the best DB and best wide receiver in this draft? This next play is versus Travis Hunter. Let's watch what happens. All right, next play. We've seen this highlight 1,000 times, this one-handed catch he makes on Travis Hunter here. More so what I want you to see is the analysis of this. Similar thing, 3 receivers, 1 tight end, one running back. Again, he's all by himself over here on the wide side, on the short side. You see they're kind of on the left hash here, but he's on the solo side. There's no tight end on his side. It's one-on-one, man-on-man, best on best here. No questions asked. That's Travis Hunter versus Tet McMillan. What I want you to see here is he doesn't sail this route. Again, this is one of his negatives, in my opinion, is his route run isn't crisp. So when he gets to these break points, he's a little bit lazy with his breaks in and breaks out, which causes him to have those contested catches, right? Good news is he's so good at catching the ball, he catches a lot of those. I'd still like to see some improvement. I'd still like to see him get a little bit more open when he's got tight coverage like this. But watch him make this play. And then extend his arms right off the bat, quarterback and receiver know exactly where this ball is going. They don't even think about it. They immediately go for it. One-on-one, he wins just about every contested catch. Not all of them, but just about every contested catch. If you saw that release, by the way, Hunter's trying to jam him here. Sometimes McMillan struggles to get out of his breaks off of a jam. He gets caught up on the inside of his shoulder pads sometimes when he lets DBs get inside here, a lot like you see an offensive lineman do, hit the breastplate. He gets caught sometimes like that. But watch. This instance, he knows he's got the best corner in the country on him, and Hunter immediately goes into a back pedal. He does not attack McMillan. He immediately went into a back pedal. Why? Because he knows who he's dealing with here. He knows he's dealing with one of the best receivers in the country who's big, strong, and tall and catches everything they throw. He essentially is snapped into defensive mode right off the bat and dropped his aggression. He already lost before the ball was ever thrown. Right? Immediately, as soon as he takes that step to the outside, which was actually a really nice step to the outside. Let me see if I can show you that one more time here. Watch his first initial step. It's a jab step, and watch his right foot right here. Bam, puts his foot in the ground and immediately wins that route. As soon as that right foot hit, he was in position. Hands off the DB, not selling the route yet. Ball's already in the air. Hunter doesn't have a chance to get here yet. In fact, he throws this ball perfectly where only the receiver can get it. Ball goes up. McMillan, rather than going over his shoulder, turns around. I would have liked to see him go over the shoulder. Instead, he turns around to high point it. I'm okay with that. I don't know if he'll get away with that with some of the top DBs in the NFL, but that's something he can learn later. Immediately one-handed catch, and on the catch gets his separation. I'd like to see that separation first, but that's okay. Again, you can't teach what he does. You can't teach the skill and the fluidity and the size and the length that he has. It's a remarkable trait, and I'm super glad we got it. Everything you've saw so far has been versus man, right? This is the first look versus zone. He excels versus man coverage. If you put him one-on-one, he's going to win a lot of those passes. What you will say, though, to that is, if you're a Panthers fan, you know good and well they play a ton of zone against Bryce Young because that's where Bryce Young struggles the most. If you give Bryce Young a one-on-one, he's going to put a dime on you and put the ball in a pretty darn good spot for the receiver to make a play. But a lot of teams switch to zone against him, particularly cover 2 and cover 3 shells, cover 3 clouds, limiting his ability to throw the ball deep, limiting his ability to throw the ball shallow, and forcing him those intermediate throws. You could probably say that's where Bryce Young's meat of his gains are, is on those intermediate throws. In this play, Tet McMillan lined up in the slot, which is odd, but he's against the tight end, where you typically would see a Z receiver. This was his position before, down here on the bottom behind me where you can't even see. Let me move my camera over. Right down here would be his typical position, but he's not playing that in this one. Instead, he's in the flanker, in the slot. As this play plays out here, watch. Cover 2 comes in. Okay, he doesn't know this yet because there's no motion, nothing. As soon as this play starts, you'll see the 2 safeties drop back deep into their cover 2 shell. Once they drop into their cover 2 shell, McMillan reads that, gets by his initial shallow defender because this guy's route responsibility in this particular play is all this area back here. This safety covers all of this. This safety covers all of this. This defender covers all of this. It's a basic cover 2 shell. Tampa 2 would be similar if this particular middle linebacker were to run back here. So it's not a Tampa 2. It's more of a cover 2 shell. All right. McMillan immediately sees that, takes a hard cut. Did you see that? This is a forced seam route. He wants to run this ball right over the top, right down this hash mark, but he can't. Defenders sit on it. So instead, he turns this ball up and runs inside of the defender, which is a really heads-up play. Watch. Goes in between the 2, forcing them to make a move here. All right? They would particularly like to be up here. They don't get to be. It's a little stuff on that you don't catch where you see a receiver kind of stand out from others. Ball comes in. The quarterback drops this ball in the perfect spot. Now, safety, wide receiver. What's going to happen here? 10 out of 10 times the receiver is going to take a hit. If he doesn't take a hit, it's because he broke both tackles and got through both of them, which is pretty rare. People like Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown do that a lot, but those are the top of the top. All right? He's going to take a hit here and knows it. Ball comes in, makes the grab, an acrobatic catch over the intermediate defenders in front of the safeties. Perfect play. He takes a big hit, but still managed to come down with it. Just a beautiful play, a beautiful route, a beautiful catch, everything. Can't knock it at all. So, good athleticism, great production, pretty good film that I would like to see improve. I'd like to see him be able to bend down a little bit on those shakes. You'll see he kind of stands up tall and runs, as you saw in all those highlights right there. Everything was standing up tall and running. Go watch a couple Hunter Renfrow clips. You'll see him run a route, and you'll see him sink down, sink his hips, sink his upper body, and make those fakes. And when he does, those cornerbacks have to bite on it. A lot of times, Tet kind of stands up tall and makes a bit of a robotic turn. Well, everybody can see that coming, and that's why he struggles with that separation. If he can clean that up, my goodness, the sky's the limit here on this. Again, wasn't my first choice, and that's what I'll get into next, though. Let's talk about who I thought would happen and what I thought would happen. All right, look, not going to lie. We had the worst defense in the history of the NFL last year. Just call it like it is. I didn't think they would go receiver first. Good news, Dan Morgan and the guys finally stopped all of the reaching and went to data-based best player available, and I absolutely love that. They set their board. Bam, 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 bam. This guy's there. That's who we're taking. Now, after the fact, they let it be known Mason Graham was their first choice. They wanted the defensive tackle, 3-tech, out of Michigan, pass rushing defensive tackle, can stop the run, excels at rushing the passer. Why? Well, we also had the worst pass rush in the league last year, minus one team. We were 31st, right? Worst defense in the history of the NFL, worst pass rush you could have. By the way, we weren't too good in the secondary either, but we did have J.C. Horn, and that was the bright spot, right? Problem is you had no safeties. What do right here? You should lean defense. That's what everyone would say. Draft need. Well, good news is drafting need tends to not work out, and Dan Morgan was all over that. He took the best player available at Tet McMillan, number 8. I wanted a defensive end. I wanted an outside linebacker, an edge, you know. Top edges on the board were Abdul Carter. Hey, everybody knows that one. He's the next Micah Parsons, or should be, right? Stats back it up. Production backs it up. Film backs it up. Next guy everybody had on the board was Jalen Walker. Problem with Jalen Walker was, while he's the Butkus Award winner, and I can't deny that, he reminds me of Isaiah Simmons and Vic Beasley. A little undersized, a little bit of a tweener. Too big to be an inside linebacker. Too quick to be an inside linebacker. Too small to be an edge. Too big to be a safety. Where do you play him? He's kind of that joker role in college. Problem, that doesn't necessarily translate to the NFL sometimes. Next best defensive end everyone had was Mykel Williams. Man, I'm not sure about that, because you want to talk about bad production. That guy's production was terrible. So who do you take? Well, it turns out Dan Morgan was all over that too. He had Nick Scourton, who was last year predicted to be a top 10 pick because he had 10 sacks at Purdue. He transferred from Purdue to Texas A&M to play with better competition. Problem. Texas A&M asked him to play a different position. They asked him to play the 5-tech. They asked him to gain weight so he could anchor the line. He did that. His production numbers suffered as such. He had good athleticism, plus athleticism. Even after the bad year at Texas A&M, where he only had 4 or 5 sacks, he still managed to have decent production. Can't get too mad about that. You'd like to see that production come up. And because of that, I think that's why Dan Morgan was still high on him. He still had a first-round grade. Now, I had a wild card grade on Scourton. I wasn't sure where he would fall based on the fact he had such a good year at Purdue and such a bad year at Texas A&M, right? That's a wild card. You're not exactly sure where they're going to get took. Dan Morgan was all over it. Moved up in the second round because we lost our second-round pick in order to get this guy, right? So he moved back up to get that second-round pick. He even said so himself once he saw some players start to come off the board, particularly some pass rushers start to come off the board. He said, hey, let's go get our guy. Managed to get Nick Scourton. Next up, managed to get Princely. My gosh, probably the best pure pass rusher aside from Abdul Carter in the draft. We'll talk about those two guys more in the next video. Wanted to start with this one to tell you what I thought about Tet. I have my jersey on order. Panthers are making us wait on that. They made us do pre-orders. I ordered it as soon as I could. It'll be here and hanging on the wall in black, just like the other receivers are. Yes, that's a Kelvin Benjamin jersey. Please don't shame me too bad. One thing you're not going to hear from me is, I feel like, or I hope, or this feels good. Feelings are not allowed in analysis. That's one of the things that messes everybody up. When you start adding in your feelings, you start making bad decisions. Emotions change from day to day. Data, stats, facts do not. It's very, very important in my grading scale and why I do what I do. Shout out to these guys at MathBomb on Twitter, X, at Football Insights on X, X Gridiron Grading on X, X Reception Perception, all great accounts with data. Pro Football Focus, shout out to them. NFL Network, where I got some of this film. All 22 film come from ESPN a little bit here and there, and ABC a little bit. I appreciate all those helps. That's how we make these grades. That's how we look at everybody. My grading scale goes like this, right? I want to see production, athleticism, and then I want to see the film. How many killer plays did you make versus the best competition possible? How was your athletic scores versus the same competition at the same position specifically? Not quarterback versus running back, right? Quarterback versus quarterback, wide receiver versus wide receiver. and then go look at the film and see how that looks. That's what I want to see. I want to see a breakdown of those three. I took those three things, gave them a percentage, put them into an algorithm that I wrote myself. It came out with scores. That's how I came up with my draft board. I had Tet McMillan as the number 2 receiver. All right. I actually thought Emeka Egbuka was the more all-around receiver. Tet has the more upside. That's why he got the high score, right? Yes, I'm excited about nearly every single person we got, even the undrafted free agents. We'll go through those more later. Thank y'all for watching. Again, I appreciate everything. Y'all be good. I'll see y'all in the next video, man. Y'all be good. Peace.